3 minutes late.
Good evening. I apologize again. Welcome to the October the 28th meeting of the Sewer Authority Midcoast. May I have roll call, please?
Director Reddick.
Here.
Director Loman.
Here.
Director Dye.
Here.
Chair Penrose.
Here.
Director Sater Carter.
Present.
And Director Blanchard.
Here.
Thank you. Do we have public comment? Yes.
Hi,
Hi, Michelle.
my name is Michelle Dragony, and I'm the Chief Buzz Officer of Coastside Buzz. And Beverly Marshall signed a $18,000 contract with me back in May for promotion and things like that. So I know Keishan had some questions about renegotiating the contract, and so to include the Montera and GCSD water meetings and stuff like that. So what I do is I watch the meetings and I curate the YouTube videos into stories with good titling and good captions and things like that. So people on Facebook and Instagram, my weekly buzz mail, my MBFM, my big fat mouth channel. But the idea is just to basically network information about the sewer authority and water authorities, which may not seem too sexy to start with. But once you get involved and you start listening to these meetings, it's actually it's fascinating.
Thank you.
I mean, the Amoresco presentation they had a month and a half ago. I mean, to reduce your power and with this particular plan, fascinating stuff for the audience. So if you have any questions about the contract, I know Keishan would like to renegotiate it, but it is kind of signed and it's good for a year. You can renegotiate it after the end of the year, or we can add in the water authorities, both Montera and GCSD. I'm here to answer any questions you might have, clarify anything that you need. I know you guys aren't on Facebook, so it's really hard to see what I'm doing, but the metrics are really sexy. They're big. I mean, I've got 2,000 friends on Facebook, and 80% of them are in Half Moon Bay. I have another 1,000 friends that are on Instagram, and I have 500 people that are on my weekly buzz mail. They're all different people within this within the Coastside. And then there's my Google rankings, which I'm just really high and very good. So I'd like to. When Beverly and I sat down, she wanted to have more visibility, more aeration, if you would. And the idea is that's what I was hoping to work with her. I had no idea she was going to quit and then not work with me, but I would like to work with you. I would like to see what I can do to help you get the word out about Sam so that more than just the few people that are in this room right now and the 4 or 5 people that are watching the videos actually engage in what you're doing. And I mean, my dream, my kid's 21, this is why I started Buzz. The whole idea was that how do you get to this younger generation and get them politically involved? In my, as Jim Hendrickson would say of KHB, in my perfect world, I would like every one of you guys to adopt a younger person and bring them along, because it's so hard. I was talking to Glenn Reynolds today, CCWD. They had 12 people apply to be on the board. Not one of them actually went to the website and researched anything about where all of the plants were, like Nunez and Denniston or anything. They were asking and they were making assumptions and comments that just made absolutely no sense. So this is kind of what I'm trying to do with Coastside Buzz, is to get people more informed so that they can run for office and so that they can remotely watch your meetings. I watch your meetings mostly. It's the first time I've been to a meeting. I watch your meetings remotely. I watch Montera, CCWD, and GCSD remotely. And I think that's a trend for people that are younger than 40. I can put it up on my phone through YouTube, and I can listen to most of it while I'm working or riding my bike. And that's kind of what I'm trying to train the younger generation, is that if we have this remote thing, it'll be more accessible. I know that Rick Hernandez on the Planning Commission, he does a lot of Skyping. I would say every other meeting he's on Skype, because he's traveling while he's working. And if we want people of the quality of mind of Rick Hernandez, we have to give them a little bit of access to it through the internet. So that's all I have to say. If you have any questions, otherwise I'm focused. The invoice has been out there, and there's some discussion about that.
I'll sign it. If it's here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you,
Any
Michelle.
questions? No? Am I good with you guys? Because I just want to I'm here to give everybody their own voice and their own words. I'm not about editing, endorsing, ego, or anything like that. tell me what you want to get out there and I will get it out there for you.
Let's do what we need to do and get it on a upcoming agenda if we have to, and
Right on, yeah. Cool. Thank you very much.
Okay, anybody else for public comment?
I have a public comment.
Yes.
I want to thank the people working at SAM and at CCWD.
Here.
And GCSD and MWSD
and City of
For-
Half Moon Bay.
and the city of Half Moon Bay, and the county, and the Harbor District, we'll get everybody in there. All of the people who work for the public agencies on the coast for doing a phenomenal job in really difficult times. I know everybody is going way above and beyond what it says on their little job description, except for the fine print that said as otherwise needed. And I know they're all doing a great job because there's no complaining public in the audience. Our sewers are working, our water is flowing, people are behaving the rules of the streetlights that are out. So I want to thank all of the folks who work on the coast and all of the folks, frankly, who live on the coast, because this could have been a really difficult time. And I'm not saying that we don't have our own personal inconveniences. Oh, the teachers and the schools too. It's not that we don't have our own inconveniences and melted this and whatever that, but we are functioning as a community and it shows our strength as a community, and I want to thank everyone, and I'm sure everyone on this board does too. So thank you very
Absolutely.
much.
Yay.
And I guess you're saying that really we're thanking all of the government agencies that have done an amazing job. And the one that really hasn't done an amazing job is the private company.
Well, I'm a shareholder-driven.
Think about it.
So when they say, let's run government like a business,
I agree.
I think it's government here that has, and, certainly the SAM folks have.
I think there are a lot of planning agencies who should have been looking at things too. I think the fact, I had CAL FIRE come to my house and actually check it to see if I had defensible space and that kind of thing, and I poor guys, they came out to take a 5-minute break or talk to me for 5 minutes, and 2 hours later I let them go after talking about all kinds of fire things. But in fact, as a community, we need to be very aware of defensible space and whose responsibility it is. When I drive down my street and I look at all the eucalyptus trees that are down it, and if one of those caught fire, would have no escape route. I'm aware of that, and I picked another one out for my 4-wheel drive car. But we all need to be aware of the need for ingress and egress and taking care of things too.
And let's throw in the Half Moon Bay Fire Protection District. So I participated in CERT training, and it was on Sunday when the power was off, and every single student who had signed up was there, and the fire chief and the people who organized the CERT, and there were other firefighters there that were undertaking other training, and doing it with generators, but making the commitment. There were several calls at the same time. People would drop things and go and take care of business. So I was really impressed by the commitment of both the people undergoing the training, the residents, and the fire staff. It was really amazing to see. So, but I'm with Barbara about the role of government and all the wonderful things that government can do when it's focused on the public good and the public interest and not on profit.
Exactly.
Yeah, Ted Adcock was open and must have had 50 people there.
Yeah.
Recharging their computers and their iPhones. Kids were there, they had snacks, they had coffee.
I was there today, and there must have
Great.
been 100.
Yeah.
Well, and at Montera, for those people who are on wells, at the Water and Sanitary District, we have a spigot. Come and fill up your buckets if you need to take water home.
Yeah. All right. We will move on to the consent agenda. Does anybody have any questions on that?
No, move item 3.
Second.
All in favor? On regular business, I'd like to pull item 4F until after we've heard Mr. Child presentation. That's 4F.
Okay.
So we can.
Do we need a motion for that?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. It's just changing
There's
the order.
consensus.
That's the, I think that's the, subject to the decision of the presiding officer.
Okay.
So
You
authorized.
could be, yeah, you could be outvoted by the board, I suppose, in theory.
Good luck with that. Okay, we'll move on to 4A, authorize the acting general manager to enter into a project development agreement for $60,000 with Amoresco.
Yeah, so we have Amoresco here who's also willing to, who's also be willing to answer questions, and they have a short presentation. So we have a PowerPoint coming up. And Chair, you'd like to know this?
I will.
Any book is used?
No, we can scoop one up. I let you know. As long as there's ingress and egress, right?
Yeah, no down eucalyptus trees right here.
No exploding eucalyptus trees.
That would not
That's a
be
real
because they
thing.
were right here. That's damage to get here.
Right?
Yeah, so at the August 26th,
Not by you.
at the August 26th board meeting, Amoresco had made a brief presentation. So now they've come back with specifics, intending to move forward with an audit, and that's what's being put up to the board. They would go around the plant and Sam's assets, and then come out with a draft plan, come back to the board a couple of weeks later. I'll let Kelsey go ahead and make a short presentation, and then be prepared for answering questions.
Well, good evening. I'm glad to be back. Good to see all of you again, and just glad that you guys have actually been weathering this really unpredictable and difficult time, it sounds like, really well as a community, so that is absolutely to be commended. And things can go really bad when the power goes out, but it seems like everybody here has been friendly and good neighbors, so that's really important. So tonight we're back in front of your board to ask if Sam would be willing to move forward with a project development agreement with Amoresco. And I recognize that it says it's $60,000, but I do want to clarify that that is an amount that would only be due to Amoresco if we do not find a project that meets the technical, financial, and environmental parameters that are outlined in that agreement. Otherwise, that amount would simply roll into a paid from savings contract with us. So that amount would not be required as cash up front unless we were to come back to this body with a project that met those parameters and you decide to say, we'll take our study and not build anything. So I just want to clarify that just for everybody's understanding. So tonight I have with me Warren Van Ryzen, who's our senior project developer. He's the technical side of this dream team over here, but he's not by no means the only person who would be working on this project. Actually, everybody whose pictures you see up there has been here at SAM, has walked the facility, spent some time with Kishan as well as Dan. Actually, most recently, our director of finance, Tim Farkas, came up here and met with Dan and Kishan to talk about kind of the financial opportunities that are out there for SAM as an agency. We could talk a little bit further about what he was able to identify for you guys. But I do want to point out, as a company, we're asking you to partner with us, and other than seeing us a couple times at meetings, you don't know us. But I wanted to give you a little overview of who we are and what we've done, the different types of measures that we've implemented in wastewater space, so that mess of bullet points up there gives you kind of the high points. But $300 million in innovative capital construction, energy measures, and process improvements. That is specific to wastewater. $250 million in financing secured from private and public sources. So that's where Tim comes in. Tim is actually a former municipal underwriter, so he has a lot of connections and experience in financing these types of projects. Yes.
What does SCADA stand for?
SCADA. It's your control system for your processes.
Supervisory control and
Sorry,
data acquisition.
Thank you.
And I have a point about that.
Sorry.
You can talk about that.
sorry, did you have another question?
No, I just think, I'm interested in the SCADA, and for reasons I'll talk about later.
Okay, all right, well. So I chose to put this slide in here because I think, again, we're trying to show you guys why it's important for an agency like SAM to have a partner that's looking out for your best interests in a very volatile energy landscape in California, to put it lightly. So all of these agencies up here have their hand in your pocket in one way or the other, quite literally. PG&E, Peninsula Clean Energy, is your energy providers. The State of California Energy Commission has some really aggressive zero net energy goals for the state. The California Public Utilities Commission sets rate-paying guidelines that PG&E has to follow. And then your friends over at the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, some of you guys may sit on that board or have sat on that board from time to time, care about where you're generating your electricity from. Is it a clean source? Is it not? And permitting related to that. So my point in sharing this information with you is to show that with all this complication, I think it helps to have an expert that is looking out for your interests as an agency, because the truth is, an agency of SAM's size, any type of disruption to your utility spending can be a major hit in your budget as an organization. So keeping an eye out for what opportunities and also challenges may be out there that you might want to be proactive in addressing, I think is a reason why you want a comprehensive energy partner like Ameresco. I'm not sure if I mentioned this last time we were here, but we actually are on both the supply and the demand side of energy. We're the largest landfill gas to energy provider in the state of California. Ox Mountain, you guys familiar with that landfill? That's one of our landfill gas to energy projects that we run on the commodity side. So we provide renewable natural gas as a commodity through that facility. So we do have experience on both the demand side and reduction, as well as the providing it as a commodity. So just a brief touch on what our preliminary assessment included, in case it's been a month and there's a lot going on. So I just wanted to refresh your memory in case you don't remember exactly what we talked about last time. But we did identify several opportunities for energy-related work here on site to reduce SAM's overall energy spend. So one of the measures was on-site generation through biogas, which is collecting and cleaning the byproduct of your anaerobic digestion process for use on site. That would include biogas flare improvements. Coincidentally, both of these items, the microturbine is on your list. The microturbine and the biogas gas flare improvements are on SAM's CIP that's approved for this year. But we would be proposing to do the entire turnkey installation, which the capital improvement budget does not allocate all the funding for the design, the engineering, the whole enchilada, construction management. That would be included in what we would be doing. And then we also looked at opportunities for renewable energy, solar, within the existing footprint of your facility on some of the rooftops, and also over the chemical feed area, which was slated to get some sort of shade cover anyway. We figured, why not put some solar on top of it and make it work for you at the same time. And then also a comprehensive pump and motor replacement project. Most of the pumps and motors at SAM's main treatment site, as well as your pump stations, are significantly beyond the useful life of that equipment and are essentially operating on a potentially risky basis. So the risk of failure is pretty high when your equipment gets to be that old and that used.
So the results of our preliminary assessment were, we came out and spent some time with Kishin to walk around the facility and identified these areas of opportunity. So what we did from that point is take these items, come back, look at what the cost and savings could be, and then determine if we had a project that would fit within SAM's parameters for project payback. So with this high-level walk, the next step we were proposing to do is what we call an investment grade audit, where we come out and do a detailed study. This process usually takes between 2 to 3 months. And these are just kind of the lists of everything we would do and perform during that investment grade audit process. So once we were able to come back and begin that, we would come and have a kickoff meeting. We would meet with Kishin and staff, spend a few days out here, taking another deep dive, looking at any maybe additional problems that you have been facing out here. and then getting into a site survey, doing all the study, looking at and gathering all the nameplate information, looking at any type of existing data. And from there, we would take that, create a baseline, and then get into conceptual design. So every time we saw an opportunity for energy savings potential, we would work to generate a certain level of engineering drawings that we would use to gather bids for the work to be performed. For example, the microturbine, that's kind of a difficult measure to implement because it would involve taking some of the existing boilers, and we would be using the microturbine to both generate electricity as well as take the waste heat for use for the process. Other things like pumps, motors, drives are a little more straightforward, and we can get by with just having some local and preferred contractors come propose costs for these improvements, and we can include those in our final project payment pro forma. So continuing on page 2.
Wait, actually, can I ask
Yes,
a
of
question
course.
about that page? Can you
Yes.
go back? What do you mean by update bills / rate schedules?
So we gathered utility information, maybe it's been 6 months or so. So it would just be to refresh that. You know, sometimes things change the rate schedule, you go into a
So you make sure you
revised.
had our current.
Correct,
Correct.
yes.
And then also as part of kind of our due diligence, if we notice something that was like funny that shouldn't, like say you're on the wrong rate or there's a more beneficial rate to you that you could be moved over to, we would make that recommendation, and obviously it would be up to Kishan and his staff to decide if they wanted to do that, but we would do that as kind of a course of our overview assessment, make
Yeah.
sure that you're paying the amount the least amount essentially that you should be paying. for.
Sometimes there are billing errors, they make mistakes, so we would catch that when we take another look.
Thanks.
Yeah,
So kind of a form of value engineering.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's free savings, so something that's very quick and easy to do. Sometimes we find a good chunk and we can actually go back months or years and get the utility to reimburse the customer for those overcharges, So moving along into development of final project scope, that's the culmination of our engineering and the bids that we receive from contractors. We also put together what we project the savings to be. So during our data gathering process, we would come out, install data loggers. So we would have, 30 to 60 days worth of operational information, so we could use that to develop our baseline. That gives us a firm understanding of how SAM operates as a plant, and we can be assured that our calculations will be accurate, years down the line. The financial analysis is pairing the costs against the savings, also including different financial models. We have ability to offer PPA rates, which is a paid power purchase agreement. It's different than a traditional tax-exempt lease purchase in the way it's financed structurally. There's no upfront cost to it. It's just a pay for the production of KWH or BTUs. So we can put all those together and offer you different
scenarios that
right.
might fit with whatever it is that makes most sense for you. So
Yeah.
for a PPA, for example, Sam would not own the equipment until the end of the term, and typically that's something that's seen in solar.
Yes.
We've also looked at it for the microturbine because it is an O&M kind of like heavy thing, and well, not heavy, but it's a little bit more complex of a measure, so it might make sense for us to own it and make sure it's running as opposed to putting that burden on Sam's staff. But that's obviously something we would want to talk through with them and make sure that, we were able to meet, and understand what your needs are related to that.
And then after our investment grade audit, we provide Sam with a report that includes all of our engineering documents, all of our pricing, savings, the different financial options to include PPA or tax-exempt lease purchase. We look at any type of rebates that are available, also try and take advantage of any incentives that are available to try and bring down the overall price of the project for Sam. And then we would come back and after working with Kishan along this whole process, make sure that he's comfortable, we would come back and present again to you what our final deliverable is and the different options.
So are you looking at procurement just of like energy-related things or of other?
So,
capital?
the way that we approached this project is we looked at your CIP budget that you already had, measures that you'd already looked at implementing, either because there was a need to do it quickly or because it had an energy component attached to it. So we looked at this project as what can we tackle that has energy savings associated with it, but really as a deferred maintenance need for the organization. We know that there's significant deferred maintenance needs here, and the idea would be for, as opposed to spending, $1, we would take 30 cents of that dollar in energy savings, and you'd end up paying, 60 cents as opposed to the full $1. So that's how we would structure the project, is by pairing those energy savings with the capital cost. It's a pretty efficient way to get all of your deferred maintenance tackled at once without having to put any cash out in front. So that's why a lot of agencies with that significant deferred maintenance backlog look at it. But primarily it is energy, because that's what we do. We're an energy services company.
There are
So-
high performers that have a attractive payback, and then we would roll in like a non-energy savings, piece of the puzzle, like replacing conduits or something that doesn't have an energy savings behind it. We would try and roll all that in so that we still have an attractive payback, but we can use that excessive savings to help, pay for other things.
So I think the key, points here is, this is a lot of eye chart. I'm sorry, it's kind of small and hard to see, but, what my intent was in showing you this process is that it is thorough, it is detailed, and ultimately, we can verify that the numbers that we present to you at the end are real, they're defensible. They're not something we pulled out of thin air. We've got data loggers that, that we can go back and show you exactly where that came from. So, and it's comprehensive, it covers your entire site and pump stations. So it really is a big look at all of your energy spend and all of your big headaches, I guess, as a facility.
I think that's an important point, that you're looking at the total picture, the total system, as opposed to just individual,
Right.
components or sub-elements of the system.
I think a systems analysis and a systems fix is much better than piecemeal.
Right.
And I'm glad you're looking at the more remote parts of the systems, because we'll never forget the Challenger, where it was a cheap
Right.
gasket that failed.
Right.
And we could spend a whole lot of money on a whole lot of stuff, and if we don't get to that last little piece, it's a waste.
Correct. Yeah,
And-
go ahead.
And our process is non-invasive, right? We're not going to come and turn things off and
Well, they've
get
already
in.
got everything. No, I'm just
Well,
kidding. Not here.
Outside of a power
everywhere
outage. And then also when we plan our construction, we try and phase things and work closely with Kishan and his staff so that we're not, bringing things down that don't need to be down. Also, this is proactive rather than an emergency situation. So we can get the right equipment or products or vendors, or use the subcontractors that have past experience and have performed well. We can time it appropriately so that we don't have, you're not working in an emergency situation, you're working proactively.
So is there the potential that this might impact our capital improvements, program? Like you'll see things and say, well, this might be worthwhile doing now as opposed to later, and
Yeah, so
it
a
seems
lot
to me
of,
that we need to tie in what you do with sort of the capital improvement planning process and
I
that
think
sort of thing.
that's true. And what Kishan has kind of directed us to do is take a look at that 5-year out plan that he has, and look at the pumps and motors specifically that we can pull forward and get them done as part of this comprehensive project, as opposed to kicking the can down 5 years, 6 years, 7 years down the road. And the reason for doing that is because, again, rather than kind of waiting for them to run till failure, you're being proactive, they're beyond their useful life, we can get them all replaced at the same time. You standardize all of your equipment, so you've got everything kind of updated at once, as opposed to, well, this one was updated when? 5 years ago? Who was working here then? Who was in charge of that project? I mean, it
not
just makes
waiting for failure.
Right. And then at the end of it, as an agency, you end up with kind of a really strong as-built deliverable that shows you exactly what the engineering design, all of the specs of the equipment, the warranties, it's all in one neat, pretty package. as opposed to trying to go dig for it at some point later down the road when something breaks.
That seems attractive.
So,
And this process is similar to what Sam has already done on 2 projects, but on a larger scale. For the energy savings for the lights, Sam had done an on-bill financing where we did not have to pay anything upfront. We were able to pay for it through our savings. That was one project. Another project is the turbo blower, for which we've got financing from PG&E, and that comes from our savings. We didn't have to pay anything, partly financed by PG&E. Similar to that, but on a larger scale.
and the reason why you wouldn't go with PG&E, so the logical question is why wouldn't we just go with PG&E for all the stuff you guys are doing?
No,
Right. The reason being is PG&E's programs are very specifically tied to their rebates and incentives. And they have very strict guidelines and they're very prescriptive. So for some of these measures like pumps and motors that are not necessarily going to have a huge chunk of energy savings, they do require, like Warren said, some of the more high performing measures to make it pencil. And PG&E doesn't necessarily bundle like that. That's not really how they do their business. So that's why you'd want to go with somebody like us for this specific comprehensive type of project. For single measure projects like lighting, it makes perfect sense to go through them, or blowers makes perfect sense to go through them. But this is going to require a level of engineering, a level of due diligence to really make it work for the long term.
Yeah, okay.
So the product development agreement itself, I know it's attached in your agenda packet, but I also know that that the power was out and some folks didn't have access to the agenda packet too much in advance of this meeting, so I'm not sure if anyone has any specific questions about that. But essentially what this is it defines our project parameters and goals from a financial perspective, being, is it a budget neutral project? A technical perspective, will it work? Will it actually be something that's constructible? And then environmental, so what are the environmental benefits to SAM as an agency for reducing your overall impact by reducing the cost of your operations? And then again, this is no upfront cost to SAM. That $60,000 price tag is only due if we do not find a project that is a budget neutral, technically feasible project for SAM.
So we're paying for
And what are
your
those
time to make that
essentially.
assessment. Yeah.
Right.
And what are those odds?
Slim.
So the reason that we do a preliminary assessment is to make sure it's kind of a qualifying, it's like a first date for us and for you. Like, do we like you? Is this going to work? Is there a project here that will potentially meet those parameters? And based on our preliminary assessment findings, we believe that a self-funding project does exist here. So that's why we're coming back to you for this as the next step if SAM would like to move forward.
And that image is just a first pass look at potential for solar, both rooftop, and then there's a cantilever carport structure near the chemical feed area.
Is that a drone, Ariel?
No, this is just a
Google Earth.
Google Earth image, and we have a program that we can lay all the panels out on and look at how the shadows affect everything. So it's a program, the results of a program we use.
And Tim already told us at the last meeting we missed a spot, so he says there's another space we need to look at for solar that's not on here, so. But actually, that's something that we would do as part of this next step, deeper dive, is make sure that we have looked at all of the viable spaces for solar within the footprint of the plant itself. We would love to get our hands on that big open space area out in front, but we understand it's environmentally very sensitive, and it doesn't make sense to look at that right now, so.
Calculate the payback.
Go ahead.
Cost divided by the savings.
Yes, for that big open space area.
Oh, is that what you're saying? Calculate the payback for that? Oh, I see,
believe you
okay.
can put that in without damaging the wetland area, if you're careful.
Yeah, I think there's a opportunity to. I just think that the environmental process and review and all that could get a little hairy.
The neighbors might have a problem too.
Sure.
If we could keep the cost down and keep it as a wildlife preserve, with a reasonable payback.
Okay.
I
mean,
or half of it. I mean, it doesn't
Yeah,
have to be the entire space.
I mean, obviously, there's some economies of scale. So if we use the whole area, that would make the best sense financially. But it being a little bit sensitive, environmentally sensitive, we can take a look and see what we could do and try and preserve as much as possible. So we'll take a second look.
There might be right of way that
Sure.
work.
Yeah, we tried to stay where we knew the ground was already disturbed. Let's just put it that way. So this is just an example, I'll let Warren, if you have any questions about what specifically this is, but this is just what would be included in that final deliverable that we would create for you out of that project development agreement. So this is what you'll get from us at the end of that 2 to 3 month development period, which we will come back and present to this board after, of course, we vetted it with your staff here. So that's just a scope of what that $60,000 a pop gets you. Do you have any thoughts on that or questions, anybody? I don't want to glaze over it, but community outreach and communication is part of what we do. So to echo
That's good.
what the lady who just spoke said, that is something we would also take into account and provide. And M&V stands for measurement and verification. And O&M stands for, obviously, I think you guys know, operations and maintenance. But
Thank you.
lots of alphabet soup sometimes. So this is just a timeline of where we're at. So you guys had the conceptual presentation in August, and then tonight is the project development agreement step. And if that goes forward, we would be aiming to come back to you in January of next year with the presentation of the findings of that audit, with the intent to move towards a construction contract, which would include any relevant financing or power purchase agreements in February. And then we would move to obtain all of the required permits for construction, and then hopefully start construction in spring of 2020. Now that depends on the coastal development permit, how long that takes, but that would be our best case scenario for when we could actually start work at the facility. And Warren and I are both here to answer any questions. I apologize if we ran a little long, but hopefully it was detailed and provided you with good information.
Well, I think my questions were answered, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh,
Thank you.
yes, I'm sorry.
I just have a question essentially for Kishan and Dan. I wanted to hear what they think about moving forward with this. It seems like a really good idea. Is this something that you fully support and think we should go forward with?
Yes, Dan and I had detailed discussions with Ameresco a couple of weeks back, and we did think that the entering into a project development agreement is a good idea, so that we know where we can save and where we can move forward with our CIP projects rather than waiting for funding to come. And therefore, that's why staff recommends that the board authorize us to go ahead and get the project development agreement started. Dan, did you have to say anything?
Historically, I've been not a big fan of these types of things. After sitting down and talking with these guys, I think they've taken a really good approach at it. They're not going to take care of 100% of your deferred maintenance. They're going to take, it's going to be a good chunk, which is nice, but there's a lot of deferred maintenance out in the plant that we got to deal with. But I think it's a good way to go. I really do, especially you guys, the situation you're in where you've got an opportunity to get several $1 million worth of work that's paid for by energy savings, and it just makes a lot of sense.
Is there any major competition for this company?
Yes, yeah, there are a lot of different companies that do similar work to us. I would say where we're unique is we're the only true independent energy services company, and where that comes into play for you is we're not selling you a particular product or service. We are selling you our engineering expertise and our subject matter expert hat. So we don't have a product line that we're trying to sell on the back end of this where we're going to get you on the hook for, you only can buy our proprietary software when it upgrades kind of thing. We look at it from the lens of what is the best solution technically for this agency. So I think that that's really crucial, vendor neutrality.
That's good news.
Yeah.
And where are you based?
We have an office here in Walnut Creek. That's our local office. Our corporate headquarters is actually in Framingham, Massachusetts. But locally to you, it's Walnut Creek. Yeah.
Dan, you're going to say?
One other thing, and I think she just brought up a really big point, and that's that they're not trying to sell you a product. It's really a design build type of an engineered construction project that is financed through the energy savings, which I think really differentiates them, and probably the reason I became more comfortable working with them, because they're not trying to force you into this product. That's
Yeah, and also
a good point.
with our investment grade audit, all those prices are firm fixed. So
Okay.
this is no change orders, no silly business down the line. We deal with the subcontractors. We have a dedicated project manager that will be on site every day with the subcontractors, making sure that they're doing what we've paid them to do and that they're not, trying to pull fast ones on us, because ultimately we're responsible to stay within that budget, because that's what we're going to have. That number is going to be funded, and that is the basis of the whole project.
So you don't have products that you're selling, but
Correct.
you do come with your set of subcontractors that you like to work with.
Well,
We can, but we also reach out to local for this project. Sorry, Warren, I think you
That's
jumped
fine.
on it. But for this project specifically, because of this area, we would be looking to your staff for recommendations for local contractors that they're comfortable with, that have performed well for this agency in the past.
Okay.
So I think we can certainly reach back to our stable of folks that we work with up in this area. But I think really employing local people is really important and can have a really big impact on a community like this. So we would strive to do that as much as possible.
Okay.
Who owns the solar systems once they're installed, and who maintains them?
It depends on the ownership model that you choose. So if you were to enter into a power purchase agreement with us, Ameresco would own it, and we would retain ownership for the term of the agreement, which is typically 20 to 25 years. There would be options during that period for SAM to buy out that system from us, and we would provide you with what that buyout number would be at year 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever year you would choose to exercise that option. It's usually based on fair market value of the system. But there's also an option if SAM would like to directly purchase it as part of the overall project, you could potentially be the owner. But I think a PPA is a good way to go, because then you're not on the hook for maintenance, and we're on the hook for making sure that
Okay.
it's producing.
That was my next
Yeah.
question.
So all that would be addressed at the end of the
The audit.
project development.
Yes. Yeah, we'll show the different options and what it looks like, what type of responsibilities we have versus you, and all that'll be detailed.
Seems like a very good idea.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I have a motion?
I'd like to move that we authorize the acting general manager to enter into a project development agreement for $60,000 with Ameresco Inc. to develop a turnkey design build energy project for SAM.
Yeah.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
Looking forward to working with you guys.
Yes. Okay, we're moving on to 4B, the Granada Force Main Segment Number 4 Replacement Project.
Yes, the Granada Force Main segment was, segment 1, 2, and 3 were constructed about 2.5 years back, 2017 April, I believe. It was constructed, and we had left the last segment, which is the segment 4, which had to be constructed, and then it goes into the gravity section. So that was left behind last time, and we wanted to go ahead and complete this force main. So we went ahead and advertised and obtained 8 bids, and it was pretty competitive, very close. The engineer's estimate for this job was about $750,000, and we got the apparent lowest bidder, which is Pacific Underground Construction, for $589,170.
Nice.
8 bidders.
8
That's
bidders.
amazing.
Yeah, that's,
And pretty close, if you see the bid amounts.
Yeah.
They're pretty close, 700, 800, 600.
Yeah, and the low bidder actually looked like a very responsible bidder with a lot of,
Yes.
good relatable projects.
Yes, staff has done due diligence and checked the
Yeah.
references, we've reached out to people, and that's why staff is recommending that the board award the bid to Pacific Underground Construction, which is the apparent lowest responsible bidder.
Good work.
Well, it's a
Thank you.
lot of impressive projects.
Yeah.
They're supposed to list, I don't know, 3.5, I don't know. All big projects for big sanitation districts. It looks
Yeah.
like they have a lot of experience, so
Looks good.
looks good. Great job.
Thank you.
I'd like to move that we award construction contract to the apparent lowest responsible and responsive bidder for the Granada Force Main Segment 4 replacement project.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Move on to item 4C, chemicals from Univar.
So in 2016, we entered into a consortium, which is Bay Area Chemical Consortium, where the chemicals are bid for the entire different peninsulas and different regions, this consortium does, and we were able to save a good amount of money for all the chemicals that we use. We use sodium bisulfite, sodium hypochlorite, we use it at the plant, and we use it at the pump stations. So the prices are already, the bids are already out in April, and then the prices are fixed now, but we just brought it to the board to let them know that it's a large amount of money, which is close to about $200,000, and we would need approval from the board to go ahead and purchase these treatment-related chemicals from Univar, which was the apparent lowest bidder in the consortium for the peninsula region.
Kishan, just about how much is our savings usually working through the consortium?
That was about
roughly
it was about 50 to 60,000.
Great.
It's quite a savings.
Yes.
And this covers the entire fiscal year 1920?
Yes.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 4D.
The digester.
So the treatment plant has two anaerobic digesters, which came online in 1999. So we have digester number 1 and digester number 2. Digester number 2 was cleaned in 2013, and there was really a requirement to clean digester number 1. We had started off this process of doing the cleaning. We had sent out bids and got proposals from bidders. Unfortunately, we got only one proposal from a bidder at that point of time in 2016, but we could not, for some reason or other, we did not move forward with the digester cleaning.
And why?
We had certain issues with the plant. We had to take care of certain hoods for the digester, and there were other projects which took preference, priority.
2017 was a bad year.
2017, we put all our efforts on the force main, then we had the bus duct, one after the other, we had some major projects.
I just was curious about that.
Yeah, so we had to set aside, and now it has become a necessity, it's become an emergency because we've had a lot of problems. The digesters are now experiencing, this particular digester is experiencing a very serious upset in the sense that it's full of inorganic material that is clogging the pumps. And we've been having, literally staff has been having a nightmare going through all those things. The pump gets clogged and we're not able to operate it further, and therefore we rented a special chopper pump which was able to chop which reduced the clogging. It did not eliminate the clogging, but the best way to move forward is to get this digester clean. And therefore we would like to take it up as an emergency, because if we were to go out and go out for a bid again, it's going to take a long lead time. Plus we are not sure whether we're going to get participants, because the last time when we advertised, we had only one bidder. So we approached them and they are willing to come and clean the digester, and their price is marginally more than what was actually bid last time in 2016. Their price, if I remember right, it was 126,000 and now it's 138,000. Comparing the 3 years that there's been hike in materials and a lot of other things going up. So we found that it was a reasonable proposal, and we'd like to move forward with this and treat this job as an emergency.
Do we regularly check the digesters to see, and can we, in terms of maintenance, once we get it cleaned out?
Monitoring and maintenance.
We don't want to do this again in 3 years. We want to know that we're keeping up with the maintenance. Is there a schedule for that, or is the...
Good question.
industry standard is cleaning an anaerobic digester every 7 years.
But what about checking it as opposed to cleaning it?
Monitoring.
Monitoring for
You really
inorganic material, yeah, it's,
You really cannot, it's a totally enclosed tank, there's nothing to see inside.
Okay.
You can't
So it's
see inside.
anaerobic?
Yeah.
correct.
So you can't put a little camera in there and take a look?
You'll see a lot of black stuff.
Yeah.
And that's about it, but it's really, the most telling indicator is when you start clogging things.
So you wait for a problem and then,
If you wait for a problem, so that's why, like Tim said, every 7 to 10 years, you just really should plan on cleaning them, which means the number 2, that was cleaned in 13, is getting close to where it should be cleaned as well again.
I don't think you want to see anaerobic processes.
No.
They're kind of gross.
no, I was just curious about how you monitor, but it looks like you can't.
Unfortunately.
This is only for
It's
number
really just one of
one.
those things you kind of do a preventative maintenance and plan on, you're going to have to do it every 7 to 10 years. Going 20 years like this one, you've been very fortunate.
You end up with
Right.
having to chop it, yeah.
Correct.
So this is number one,
Correct.
cleaning number one.
Yes, digest.
And number two may need it soon.
2 was cleaned last in 2013.
So
So
where,
it's
6
coming up.
years ago,
It is
is
coming
this
up.
a budget adjustment or where is the money for this coming from?
Yes, we would need to do a budget adjustment. We'll do a mid-year budget adjustment, but right now we do have the money, we can go ahead and move forward. But ultimately, it was discussed also with the member agency managers, we'd like to consolidate a couple of things and then bring it for a mid-year budget adjustment.
But if we approve this, we're essentially approving the adding additional funding from our agencies to fund this process. Yes, even though we're not having a budget adjustment right now.
Yeah,
I mean, if you have money to do it, that doesn't mean there's money that's approved to do it, right?
No.
however, this is an emergency.
It's an
I know,
emergency, so.
I'm in favor of
Just
it.
curious.
I'm just trying to understand
No.
how the money is
Yeah.
gonna work in this case.
Yeah, we have money to do certain projects, which we can push it probably the second half of the year. And then we'll bring it for the mid-year budget adjustment and
And
hopefully
that's,
that
We
comes
should
through.
still be aware that this is going
Yes,
to cost
good
us
point.
additional
and that's
money
why
when we
we
vote for it.
should be banking it into reserve so that these are not,
Yeah,
so that these expenses are planned for and banked ahead.
Well,
And
it should
that's
be in the
what
budget.
this board can do.
yeah.
Yeah.
Different from past boards.
Now, to tee off a good point that Barbara made at the last meeting, are there any economies of scale in cleaning both? You know, as long as the other one is due next year.
Other than having the contractor, I'm sorry, Kishan, if you want.
Go ahead.
Other than having the contractor on site, but there is a time frame between cleaning one, having the other one up fully operational, and then taking your operational one, switching it to the one that was just recently cleaned is probably enough of a time span where the people doing the actual cleaning, the contractor, would want to be off-site doing something else because you are gonna have that span. Correct?
I agree. In this case, I think it's negligible.
Okay.
Okay, can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I also want to say, I know that you guys have worked really hard on this, right? Many extra hours to keep the digesters working and so forth, and thank you.
Yes,
I know
with the
this
pumps,
has
when
been-
the way the pumps gets clogged and
This has been
staff
an
is putting
actual
extra hours.
emergency, right?
Yep, it is.
You've been really trying to solve it, so
Good point.
thank you
Thank you.
for all your hard work on it.
Okay, we will move on to 5A, monthly manager's report.
No, I think we have 4E.
4E?
4E and 4F.
We just did 4E and we put
Okay.
4F off.
Oh, right,
We
right, right.
moved forward.
So we're doing 5A.
Yep. Now,
Oh, there was,
I'd like to first talk about the staff report that we submitted as a part of 3C, which is revenue and expense report. A couple of weeks back, we had received information from one of the board directors that our finance report should be more like an executive summary. We should probably emphasize more on what are the types of revenues, expenses, and summarize most of it and give an executive summary. So we've just made a beginning. If you've observed that it's, agenda item number 3C, we put certain criteria what we'd like to project. So we'd like to get feedback from the board, if not today, sometime later, so that we can improve upon it. And the next meeting, we'll be able to give you more information. This is just the beginning. We thought we'd just start off with this.
Good point, thank you.
And before we go into the complete manager's report, I'd like to mention that we've had, as all of you are aware, we've had 2 major power outages from PG&E. One during October 9th and 10th, which was for about 17, which was probably more than 20 hours at least, close to 20 hours we had power outage from PG&E. And the one recent one, which started off on Saturday at about 8 p.m. and we got back power at 3:30 this evening, about 17 to 18 hours. So staff did a commendable job. We had absolutely no problem. And just to let you guys know, we manage not only the plant, we own 3 pump stations and we manage 17 lift stations, 13 belonging to Montara and 3 belonging to Half Moon Bay, 1 belonging to Granada Community Sanitary District. This is besides our plant and 3 pump stations. So I would request Tim to give a brief summary of what we went through and how we managed the situation, and we'll bring a detailed report in our subsequent meetings.
Okay.
Yes, Tim, go ahead.
Me? So probably the biggest challenge we had with this event was the unknowing of the timeline, because as you know, we have a relatively small staff anyhow. So to schedule a small staff on a 24-hour basis is super difficult. So not getting the timeline and then trying to sort of bump people along, asking if they can come a little bit later. We did manage to do it. Our maintenance guys, and still are currently working, they're out in the field right now. They're refueling everything because we are looking at another power shutdown tomorrow, which could, yes, so I have 7 p.m. from my guy, but we'll see what happens, and that's expected to run into Thursday. So we were able to handle everything. Keep in mind, like Kishan said, we had the main plant, the 17 lift stations, the 3 pump stations, various grinders out in the Montara area. The biggest challenges probably we had in the field were Bell Moon lift station had a generator issue. We think, after working with the city guys today, we think that maybe what happened, the city guys were refueling it for us on a 4-hour basis to keep it going. The upside is, with a power emergency such as it was, nothing's open. So we could basically pump it down and it was good to go. But the problem with the generator, like I said, I think at this time is I don't know if you guys are aware, but there was some bad fuel at the Alliance Station a couple weeks ago. So we're thinking maybe, we're crossing our fingers, they were able to get it running today. So hopefully that's all it was. But the upside is, like I said, with the power outage, nothing being open, we can suck it down and keep it at a level where it's not really an emergency. If it were raining, all bets were off. Totally different.
Wow.
And for the most part, that's the only real issues we had in Half Moon Bay. Granada was pretty straightforward. Granada, pretty much a bowl. Everything runs down to either San Pablo or to Portola. Out in Montara, Montara was interesting. We went around with when I said we, because I was out there also, believe me. We went out, one of the pump stations, lift station, 5th Street lift station in Montara, The rest of them, the portable generator worked fine, 5th Street lift station. We hooked up the portable generator, we powered it up, made a freaky weird noise, turned it off real quick, rechecked all the connections, powered it up again, started making weird noise, turned it off. And then we ended up having to go back out to that lift station and suck it down with our Vector. Keep in mind that our Vector is currently in the shop because the turbo went out on it, which is just brilliant. This big Vector truck that you guys see on the road, so the turbo went out on that. But we were able to get our vac trailer going again last week. So long story short, staying on top of everything. Staff is a little on edge. They've been a little stretched, working some extremely long hours, but they're doing it. They're doing it.
Please thank them for us.
Yes.
I just got a San Mateo County alert to public safety that the PG&E will shut off power to customers south of Pacifica and west of State Route 280 to the ocean in the evening, 11 p.m. on Tuesday.
Oh, they keep pushing it.
Pushed it back.
11 p.m., they've pushed it back.
Good.
Nice.
Yay!
Yeah.
Like to hear that, sort of.
And I must tell you that Tim was actually living in the plant all the days. Saturday.
The morning of October
If
30th.
I have no reception at home, this is the only place I have reception. So if I'm not here, I can't respond.
So do they have a cot for you somewhere?
Yeah.
It's under the table here.
Well, we're very lucky to have staff
It is
that
the
care this
table.
much
It is.
and are willing to do this, and I really appreciate it.
I know, it's really, this is the kind of thing we need to put communications out about,
Yeah.
We need to get through it first.
I have a couple questions.
Any questions on the manager's report?
I do.
Yes, please.
So is this repeated, like day after day after day, work on the heat exchanger sludge recirculation line again, related to the digester?
That would be correct.
Okay, so, it just seems like day after day,
Day
we're trying
after
to do the
day
same
after
thing,
day.
day after day after day.
Yes.
And in concert with the heat exchanger and the mixing pump and the
Recirculation.
bottom sludge transfer pumps that are both currently down, which is why we're using an above ground grinder transfer pump to go from one digester to the other. But while all this is going on, we also had the added problem of the digesters cooling because they're not heating properly, because you're not mixing the sludge and you're not keeping your temperatures up. So you can go into, you can start having problems, I'll keep it short. You can start having problems, you can have foaming issues. And we were probably on the front end of that, I would say. But I think we're.
Is any of this
we're
related
past
to flushable wipes?
it. Flushable wipes are extremely problematic, and yes, they get in the pumps and they are an issue.
Yeah, they're not digestible.
Yes, I know they're not flushable, although I have had people say to me, look what it says on the package.
Yes.
So.
They flush just fine, they just wreck everything downstream.
It's perfectly flushable.
I was just in Greece, and their sanitary systems are so old that they have actually bins by each toilet for you to put most of your toilet paper into.
Mm-hmm.
It's another way to do it.
Yeah, and I doubt if anybody there would be caught with a flushable wipe that would go into the solid waste, which makes sense.
They should be compostable,
Yeah,
Yeah.
go in the green waste bin.
And then
but not green waste, maybe the decomposable.
I wanted to update on the wet weather storage project. I know you were asking for an extension. I wondered if we got the extension, and then if we got any revisions to the scope or timing of the project, because those were the issues we were hoping to get a change on to go out to bid.
Yes, that was on my list. In fact, I got my paperwork to tell you
good.
guys about it.
But was it on the agenda?
No, it was a part of my report. I wanted to,
Part of the report.
Great.
part of the report, I wanted to update that. A few days back, I heard from the environmental planner of the San Francisco estuary. We send him quarterly reports, and apparently I think he's been given the task of putting down the various milestones. So he reached out to me, and most likely he's going to recommend to the water board, saying that the construction contract will be awarded sometime in March, which means once they give us an extension officially, I'll be able to bring it to the board and then seek the board's approval for advertising. If I do that in November or December, I'll have enough time to go out for a bid and get the bids and award the construction by
For the
March.
same project, or I thought you wanted to modify the project?
Yeah, we have given them options. We'll have to see what they come back with. We'll first see what they come back with, the recommendation of a change in design or getting options.
Yeah, the fellow that he's talking about, the San Francisco Estuary Project, is sort of like a project manager for the regional board. They don't want to get involved with that.
Right.
So they have to work through him, but he can't approve anything. He's got to send it to the regional board with a recommendation.
But we don't even know what the change in scope or timing is going to potentially be.
That's correct.
So I'll bring it back to the board once I have a firm answer from them. That's it. Any other questions on the manager's report?
Oh,
Move on to 5B then?
Okay.
I'd like
thank you.
to ask for a 5-minute break, if we could.
Sure.
Just fine.
5-minute break.
Yeah.
Please return by 8:18.
Not even a second break.
That's right.
Is the camera off?
They would need the screen, the dance presentation.
Okay.
We can take the time to keep it ready.
Oh, good, I can take this 5 minutes to finish signing checks.
It's just like, that gets people's attention more quickly than a soft voice.
I know, I left it over there though.
Oh, I need to sit back.
Yeah, listen, I need to watch pictures again.
I'm gonna sit back here. I
Get
hope
through the
so.
school. No, Pacifica won't be 20.
Well, as I'm sure you remember, first of all, I'm Dan Child, in case you don't know who I am. Thank you for having me back, and thank you for letting me work for you and with you the last couple of months. As you recall, you hired me initially at the end of July to do a review of SAM and see what I found as issues, and I'm not going to go through all these again, but you'll probably remember we came up with 10 categories of things that were of significant interest: finances, just a general trust issue, how the board functioned, which I'd want to stop here and say, this board, I don't know how you function other than when I've seen you, but what I've seen so far, it's a great board that seems to interact well and communicate well and does a good job of relating the issues to the public. So I think if you had problems in the past, that part of it looks really good. The JPA itself is old and needs updated. I understand the managers are working on that. You currently don't have a manager at this facility. The collections contracts are an issue. Just how SAM is managed from the board, how it's been managed in the past has been an issue. Staff and staff levels and staff trust. The wastewater treatment plant has some, as we've talked earlier this evening, some real issues with deferred maintenance, and the process and recycled water are all things. So the critical things that I think we need to address really soon, finances is definitely number one. We're still behind on the audits. 2017-18 is yet to be completed. Hopefully we'll have that soon. The Tyler system is coming along pretty well, actually. I'll get into a little bit more of it later on, but it is believed by staff at this point that Tyler is a good system, that it is a system that meets the needs of the agency and is usable. There's a need for some training, so I'll talk about that. The reconciliation of the billing between the agencies, what SAM thinks they're owed, what the agencies think they paid, is definitely an issue that needs to be reconciled. We need to reconcile the reconciliation. And, excuse me, how we do the budget is a big issue, especially for the member agency managers, and being able to really understand what Sam is proposing to spend. And we do have a plan going forward for that. Another item, the plant and the IPS. When I talk about IPS, I'm talking about the pipe and the pump stations. We have started what I call a due diligence audit. As many of you may remember, my background is from a private sector company as well as a municipal background. And in the private sector, we go into facilities and look at what can we do to make it, to be able to save money. Much like Amoresco was in here looking at things. What can we do to make this a more efficient facility so that as a private sector company, we can make money at it? And I do not believe Sam is a good candidate for privatization or contract operations, so don't take me wrong. It's an organization that has the ability to do things well. It just needs a little bit of structure and management and some capital investment, but we're starting to address those things. But what I've done is, one of my partners is an expert in these due diligence audits, coming in and identifying issues. So he and I have gone through the plant section already. We've looked in the treatment plant, done our first inspection. We're going to do the complete collection system as well, look at the pump stations and identify things and get back to you with a report, and I'll get into timing on those things. Had another expert come in. We are currently feeding a chemical for odor and corrosion control that is quite expensive and not real effective. So it's kind of a double whammy that it's not working very well, so we brought in an expert. We're expecting his report any day now to tell us what he thinks would be the best way to go and how to save us money and get better results. Obviously, once we get all these things, we need to identify and prioritize what need to happen first. And a lot of them intermesh. I want to continue to stress that. Part of my job and part of the issues I've had when I've talked to different people is, what are your deliverables? And I am going to talk about deliverables here in a minute, but part of mine is more touchy-feely than it is hardcore, we're going to build something. So it's a little bit more difficult. But I definitely want to bring a budget and a plan to the board on what we need to do to get the plant and the IPS in condition that's going to last for another 20 years. Because right now, it's questionable whether that's going to happen. These are just a few pictures. I'm going to use the arrow. If I can get the arrow to work. There we go. Nope, it's not showing up there. Okay, in the top left-hand corner, it's kind of hard to see, but that is actually a motor that the whole back side of it has rusted off. And that motor is still running somehow. I have no idea how it's running, but it is. It's amazing. The one right in the middle there, that's the base to a light pole that has totally rusted away.
Looks like San Francisco PUC. Attention.
I don't want to throw you guys in that category.
We're not that bad.
So the bottom left is the base plate underneath that rusted away motor that's just almost gone. On the top right is actually a leaky wall where stuff is running down, and the bottom right is where your staff has become inventive and actually pop riveted a section of rain gutter to the wall at an angle that goes into a funnel and then goes into a pipe down into a drain in the ground, in the floor.
Yay,
So
staff.
they've been very creative in that. This is some electrical on the left, is a junction box that is corroded away. The second one over from the left is actually about a 3 by 5 foot electrical box with just, I don't know what's hanging out. Every wire in the world is hanging out of it.
Oh, dear.
Totally corroded away. The bottom of it's gone. The next picture over with the blue sky is actually a roof of a metal building that's out there that has just corroded away. And the bottom right hand one there, that's hand railing that was anchored to a wall, but it is pulling, the studs are actually pulling out of the wall just from the saltwater corrosion and the hydrogen sulfide in this area. So you do have a lot of stuff going on out there that's just being eaten away by the atmosphere and by the hydrogen sulfide, which is part of the odor and corrosion control that we need to look at. Now there are some good things. On the top left there is your new rotating drum thickener that you purchased, and staff is currently building a lean-to over the top of it to protect it. The second one over on the bottom is your belt filter press. That's actually a 20-year-old press that is still working well. It's getting to the end of its useful life, but as today it works well. And the other two photos on the right-hand side are your secondary clarifiers, one full of water and one empty. Even though the empty one looks like it has rust in the bottom, that's pretty normal when they're empty, just to look like that. That's a concrete bottom. It's just stuff that gets deposited down there. But the effluent going out of the plant today is good effluent. You just approved the purchase of some tipping troughs for the primaries, for the scum. That's an area where we need to do some improvement. There are some tanks out there that we think we can repurpose to make it a better process as we go through it. That kind of stuff will come back. But it's not all bad news. There are some things that are really good, and you have been investing recently in some needed things. So, did I skip one or is that the one? Okay. So, critical path items I think we need to address are, first of all, the collection service contracts. There's a need to standardize SAM's contract so that it's meeting the needs of your agencies, but also make it so that it's better understood what SAM is providing. There is definitely some question in all three of your agencies that as to exactly what you're getting and what you're paying for and how you measure it and that type of thing. So we need to better define those things. We need to identify equipment needs, training needs, and again, prepare a cost and a budget for board consideration if it's determined that we need to do purchase other equipment or do training, which I think there will probably be some. One thing that I noticed on the collections when I was talking with your managers is they all seem to feel like SAM has the ability to do what they need him to do, but we just haven't been able to communicate it and identify it and get SAM going in the right direction. At the same time, SAM does not have all the equipment that is needed. And I think Half Moon Bay just got a report from their subcontractor on that recently, and Mark Thomas, I think was the name of the firm, that there's some areas where they don't have the right cleaning equipment to be able to get the hardened grease out of the system and things like that. Questions about should SAM contract with somebody to do that, or do the member entities want to get somebody else and administer those contracts? Those kind of things are things that we want to work through. We actually have 2 meetings set up in November with your managers to start talking about how we're going to do that. So it's we're moving in the right direction, I think. Another one is just ongoing support of the acting general manager and the O&M needs in the plant. We need to continue to build trust. I know Kishan has been doing a really great job of sending out emails about things that have happened here. I think we'll continue to build on that practice and communicate. Policies, I took a superficial, I'm going to be honest, a superficial look at policies really quick. We're missing a lot of what I would consider standard policies. How do you hire people? How long, are they on probation? How does your policies interact with MOUs with the unions? Those kind of things. It's not real well specified. Some of the financial policies are there, but a lot of these policies date back into the 80s. And
it's too old.
As you can imagine, things have changed since then. So we need to fix that. I think we need to look at the management structure. When Kishan said Tim lives here, Tim lives here. And it's not just because of his phone, that's a good excuse, but he is here a lot of time.
I'm working right now.
Yeah. So, and then when the time comes, we need to look at your intermediate long-term hiring a general manager options and how you want to do that.
So I don't see anything in there about like succession planning. So I know we have some managers retiring, in the foreseeable future, and how are we dealing with that?
I haven't dug into the succession plan. It is identified in my scope when I get down longer, but it's not something that I have on do it today.
I know there's a lot of priorities,
Yeah, and succession plan, I think, will honestly fall into the management, evaluate and recommend management structure. I think it will really kind of fit nicely into that scope and make it all come together. But it's not, it is critical for Tim and a couple other people are, fairly close to being able to retire. But,
No, he's indentured.
okay, that'll work. The other thing though is even succession planning for when somebody's leaving or when can you hire somebody? The practice now is to wait until after they're out the door before we even advertise to hire somebody. And because of that, all that knowledge that's stored in their heads goes out the door with them rather than getting it transferred. And I think we need to do a better job of budgeting for when these people, when people are going to leave, because there's always going to be somebody that sees a greener field, and that's the way it should be. But you got to budget to be able to have them come on board a little bit early so you can capture that knowledge, especially if you're longer term employees.
Or like Debbie's saying, look at promotion for succession, so.
Yeah. And I think, again, the whole management structure, and when I say management structure, it's not just the 2 or 3 managers, it's the whole supervisory umbrella that needs to be looked at of how they put this together. Again, Tim not only lives here, and I've told him this, so this isn't surprising, but his span of control is way too wide and way too many. I don't know how he does it.
He's a control freak.
He is a control freak. The process control management plan that we've talked about, we definitely need to get started, but I'm going to talk a little bit about phasing. It's going to be about an 18-month process as I've evaluated it and learned a little bit more about how we operate here. And that's for the operation of the plant and the collection systems. For the finance and administration, we'll develop standard operating procedures that specify exactly how things happen. So if anybody comes in and wants to do Susie's job, there's an SOP there that tells you this is how we get the agenda out. And hopefully we've done cross-training and that type of thing as well. But at least there's something in writing. I know I use Susie for an example because I know she's already done this for the agenda. But there's everywhere in the finance and administration we need to have that type of thing. And the process control management program will do essentially that same type of thing for the rest of the facility. So from a deliverable, this is really short term. In the next 30 days or so, I want to coordinate and set up those first meetings for each of the member agencies for the reconciliation of the billings. Gets that started. I think it's critical that we start talking to each other because right now, in talking to the consultant you hired, she feels like she's done everything she can, but she cannot bring everything to a total fixed balance to where she's comfortable that it's right. And the only way to get it's going to be sit down and say, okay, you got this, we got that, where are we? And figure it out. Until we do that, it's going to be finger pointing and it's not going to happen.
It's going to have to be some negotiation, I think.
And I think we will end up with some negotiation, and some compromise. So, as I spoke earlier, the Tyler system, talking with George, he is the most hands-on. He feels like a super good system, a lot better than QuickBooks. He feels like it's definitely the thing that we should be using. But he says a lot of times he's been asked to do something and he's had to figure it out rather than get some training on how to do it. And there is training available, and I think it would be good to put together a training schedule and be able to identify what these people need to be able to do that.
And so there'll be an SOP manual on that for?
Oh, yes, definitely. Absolutely. I know there's been some questions, even on my level, of the financial reporting format that comes to you in your agendas and that type of stuff. Was what does this really mean? So I'd like to come back at the next meeting. Once Stacy gets back on board, she's out on a personal item, but she should be back, I think, next week at this point. But get with her and try to put together some formats to try and make it a little clearer. I know, was it you that brought the fireboard? One of you, or Barbara brought the fireboard?
No, I brought up the fireboard
You
because
brought the fireboard?
I like their model.
Yep. So that's one to look at, but try and build on that. As I mentioned earlier, the draft order and corrosion alternative analysis and recommendations, we should have any day, and I'll get that finalized so that we know what we're looking at there. And an equipment-only due diligence of the plant will be done and available by the next meeting as well. Yes?
So, one of the things I thought of when we were hearing the presentation of Amoresco is, so how are we going to avoid sort of overlap between what you do in terms of your audit of our systems and what they will be doing, so that how will you be interacting with them?
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why Kishan had me set in to speak with them, is because, as I mentioned, they're not going to fix everything. They've got some very specific ideas, motors, some pumps, which is good because some of your pumps out there are 40 years old. They're just unbelievable that they're still running, and like that motor. But I think the best thing is me being involved in coordinating with them is the only way to really do it. And they're willing to do that. They seem to be, as I mentioned earlier, I think they have an approach that's different than most of the companies in that line of work, where they want to get you what you really need. And I think almost as an owner's representative, I can help represent these guys with them to make sure that we actually get what is best for the facility overall and coordinate with them.
So that'll be kind of a job for Keishan, to manage overall how that all fits together.
Yep. Exactly.
And what is an odor and corrosion alternative?
What is that?
What is that?
That is, right now, out at the pump stations, we inject what's called sodium hypochlorite. Basically, it's Clorox, it's liquid bleach. It is, and we inject it to try to neutralize the hydrogen sulfide that's formed in the sewage system from anaerobic activity. It's a pretty good instantaneous reaction chemical. If you have an odor problem here and you want to eliminate that odor problem right there, but it doesn't do anything for the downstream issues. Part of your corrosion issues at the treatment plant are tied to the sewage coming in and bringing that in.
Yeah.
So we brought in a guy that's very, very good at looking at alternatives. He was one of my listed sub-consultants because it's a common problem. He looked at it, and the thing I like about, his name's Vince, and the thing I like about Vince is he will tell you to do something even if he's not going to make money out of it. He's very, very honest. And so when he sits down and looks at things, basically he comes up with, this is what's going to work best for you in this case. If he happens to sell it, that's great. Today he really doesn't sell a lot of stuff other than hard equipment. He tends to sell where we need chemicals. So, but I know that I can pay him and get a good recommendation. So the purpose of this is twofold, is to control the odors out in the pumps, out in the community, so you don't have people complaining about smelling their sewers, especially around pump stations and where a force main goes to gravity is the most common place where you get odors. The second one is the corrosion of your force main. Once it goes to gravity, the top of the pipe will tend to corrode away, and once it gets to the treatment plant, all this. So we want to put in a chemical that lasts going down through the system rather than an instantaneous reaction like sodium hypochlorite. The most common, I think, probably my guess based on what I've seen before, is we'll probably get a recommendation to use what's called sodium nitrate. Nitrate is an alternative oxygen source for the bacteria so they don't go anaerobic, and it takes care of that problem. But we'll see what he recommends, and then I'll fight with him. So stage one, I've broken this into three stages. The first one is going between December 1, because I'm going to try and hopefully get a commitment from you guys to do a more long-term program. But from December up through December 1 is what I just talked about. From December 1 through June 30th, I want to come up with a finalization on these reconciliations with the billings, finalize the 2017-18 audit and get the 18-19 audit started, develop and revise SOPs for at least 3 of the functions in the finance department. Going to identify which ones are the top priorities, and there's going to be more than 3 of them, which will come in stage 2. And then present the preliminary plant and IPS action plan on the staff structure, supervision, management control, capital, and O&M practices. We'll look at all of those things as we put this together. So I'm not saying I'm going to deliver these all on June 30th, but between that time frame, those first 6 months, I want to be able to get back to you with these things.
I might recommend that we consider, maybe even like moving directly to negotiation with the member agencies over the billings. I think that could be a real time sink when there's so many important things we need to be, working on. So I'd hate to see us spend, oodles and oodles of hours trying to, find the needle in the haystack that might satisfy, one of the member agencies, but maybe just find a way, fair way to sort of deal with it
Just come up with
more quickly.
some kind of
I don't know how, we're not
Not
opposed
that
about
much
that.
a total sum. I mean, the whole point, I keep saying is, obviously, there's an answer somewhere. But we don't want to spend so much money trying to find that answer
Yeah.
that it costs us more than it would be to
It may
just say,
cost-
hey, let's split the difference.
I think we could put it on a spreadsheet though, so we could see what's been billed, what's been paid, and when, and then.
Available.
I think it should be available both from the agencies and from Sam.
I just think we
That's what's
might
been-
want to, we might just want to cut our losses in terms of time and resources and move on to, really important things. I just don't want to, I see that as a potential trap, a long-term trap trying to, find that last dollar. And I think it's more important to straighten out, our housekeeping and make a move on, so.
But I think it's important, we've already spent a fair amount of time on trying to reconcile this, so we should be able to put it into one format so that everybody is comfortable and nobody feels cheated.
That's
Yeah,
fine, I
that's
just don't want to
precisely
spend a
what's-
whole lot more time doing it,
Yeah,
that's
that's
all.
precisely what's been done, like what the card has been mentioning. We have management partners who's actually spent a whole lot of time reconciling for all the 3 member agencies. They've developed a spreadsheet going back 3 years, putting one column receivables, invoices, receipts, what it is. She's got the numbers, dates, everything. We're just giving the finishing touches, and then we'll probably give it to the member agency so that we can discuss it.
Okay, so my
I'd
recommendation
like-
would just be like, let's move this on as quickly as possible.
Right.
I'd like the board to see it maybe before it goes to the member agencies so that we can give our managers some input too, having seen it. I think that the board members all need to know what's
Yeah.
going on,
The
both for our
early- yeah.
agencies and this board.
The earlier proposal was to give it to the finance committee, so we wanted to
Yeah.
give it to the finance committee first, and then pass it on to the member agency managers, because a
Fabulous.
lot of things have to be, groundwork has to be done by the staff at the member agencies.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think moving forward, part of our whole reprocessing is going to be setting, reasonable expectations by member agency staff about how things work, what's expected, rather than have a clash of cultures. This agency does it this way, and we don't want to,
Yeah.
do it that way. And, so we need to sort of get on the same page about how we operate, and so we don't get into this position again
Good plan.
and have individual agencies
Exactly.
going on campaigns and stuff like that, so.
And then I guess there's kind of 2 reasons why I do think it's important to talk about this with member agencies and SAM staff. And one is to get those cultural walls broken down a little bit, because there are some really strong cultural walls right now. The second is, even though management partners, when I talked to her about this, she's like, yeah, I can see stuff on a computer that was entered starting in 2018-19, but I can't, everything else she's been trying to recreate. And she is not confident in her numbers. She really isn't. And for that reason, I think she would feel more comfortable, and matter of fact, I know she would, if the member agencies were able to present what they found and sit down and say, okay, at that point, it may come back to you guys and say, okay, we're $50,000 apart, where are we gonna end up?
Right.
And solve it, rather than a big, because you're right, it could go in circles for years.
It could, so that's why I want us to find a
But we
way to
just,
deal with
as
this.
board members, we need to see where the holes are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
exactly.
concerned about the closed session, and that it's 10 to 9.
We have a closed session?
Yes, we do.
6 items.
Yeah.
Yeah, what about a general manager? Because Keishan is under certain pressures that.
I don't know if this is the form we should be talking about
Yeah, I
now,
think the legal council has that.
Gotcha,
I got a
okay.
question about this.
but
That's fine.
there are some
We have to get
things.
to
I will hurry through this really quick. I got these deliverables real quick from July 1 through of 2020 through June of 2021. I tried to break it down by fiscal year because I thought it'd be easier also from a budgeting standpoint. Again, finalizing audits, getting by the end of by June of 2021, I would hope that we are on schedule and have all our audits being finished in the year that they're supposed to be finished. So there's no reason that shouldn't happen.
I know that's a problem for Montera's upcoming audit. Our auditor asked to see the SAM audit.
Well,
And-
even your Amoresco people, one of the questions I had with them is, how are you gonna get financing for this because they finance it based on your credit. And I'm like, how are you gonna do that without finished audits? And they said, well, we're gonna have to look and see what's really available, but that is an issue that will probably come back to us on
August,
that.
yeah.
Yes, another good reason to, try to bring this to conclusion so that we can position ourselves.
Exactly. 'Cause,
Well, we did
you-
our audit based on a year-old audit instead of the audit it should have been done on. And, when the final audit comes out, I guess there'll just be an additional letter attached with any revisions based on the new audit. But, this is not the way to do things.
Nope.
So basically, I want to get the process control management plan kicked off approximately July 1 of this coming summer. It'll take 18 months to do. Need a decision on what we want to do with recycled water implementation. We'll talk about, get some discussion going with the managers and you guys about that, formalize a decision on where to go with that. And the final version of the plant and the IPS action plan on what we need to do will be done by then, so we have a nice long-term plan of where you want to go. My goal at this point is to have Sam in a stage when you hire a new long-term manager, that person comes in and inherits a well-running, functioning facility that has programs and things in place, so they don't have to try and reinvent the wheel and create and solve a lot of problems. If you have somebody do that, you should have a successful manager. But coming in the middle of a big mess makes it really, really hard for somebody to be successful because they're trying to put out fires before they get a chance to get their feet on the ground.
And mission critical, we can't afford any other spills and lawsuits, so.
Exactly. So the last one goes through the end of December of 2021, basically finalize those audits, finalize and implement the process control management plan and have your people trained so that they can keep it going. Process control management plans take a champion. It takes somebody that has the time to really implement it. If you just leave it to staff, it will never happen because it takes too much time to get them going and too much training to get them focused on doing that.
And staff has other jobs.
Yeah, they have a day job, exactly. Again, where we go on the recycled water, assist with recruitment of a general manager if that's your desire, and then at the board's direction, implement the plant and IPS action plan. So basically that's it. The rest of it is estimate on hours and costs. I don't know if you want to see that tonight.
Yes.
Okay, so stage 1, which is December 1 of this year through June, I'm estimating about 600 hours in the finance department, nothing on the PCMP, and when I put nothing, that's a lie. All this stuff interacts to some point, but the focus is not going to be on the PCMP or the succession plan or JPA assistance. It's going to be on these other 3 things, which is finance department, plant owner optimization, and management support, including succession planning, and as needed, some JPA assistance if we can help with that. you, okay? Phase
I
two.
think that the managers and the various legal people are gonna work on the JPA, so.
Yeah, I don't anticipate I'm gonna do a lot other than like, review type stuff and maybe come up with some suggestions if I can help in that way, and that may be something that you really don't want to do, but, I think this is looking at about 10 hours a week, which isn't a lot of time to spend supporting Kishan in his role, and a lot will vary, but I'm anticipating somebody's gonna be in an interim position between now and then, so. I look at 30 weeks of 10 hours a week there.
Well, I think we're gonna need like more discussion of this, and I'd actually like to see a copy of this PowerPoint, and, we have a discrete action before us
Yeah,
tonight.
I'm definitely not asking you to make a decision on this tonight, so we can post this and we can discuss it at the next meeting, or even at the finance committee, if the finance committee wants to.
Yeah, that might be an option too.
Make a
But I would like to see
recommendation.
your presentation if we could somehow.
I will email it to everybody tomorrow.
Okay, that's great.
Could we go back to the deliverables that, stage one deliverables,
The stage one or the?
or the short term?
But we're not approving this tonight either. Correct?
Well, we're approving payment through the end of November.
Right.
And so what I wanted to do was see what was going to be happening during that pay period.
These are the basic things.
So that would all be included in the item before us?
Yes. I need to explain
Well, that
these.
seems, I agree with the comment about the billings, but I think this is
We certainly have to get on top of Tyler, there's no
Yeah.
question about that.
and I know that sometimes it's easier to just try to figure it out than it is to stop and get help and make sure it gets, with the new system, there are always issues. So I think it's good to have a look at how Tyler can get properly implemented, because I think they're close.
These are kind of tangible things, because like I said, a lot of, when I'm here, I am talking to people, I'm going out to the plant, I'm answering Tim's, questions, trying to use expertise that I have that I can help these guys run better on a day-to-day basis, so there's a lot more that I'll be doing, but it's really tangible that I can give you a hard, I did this, and this those days. These are the things that I really came up with for the next 30 days.
Yeah, so, I like looking at proposed deliverables, because that shows work, getting done. And I get the quantitative versus qualitative, distinction, but there are still ways to conceptualize a deliverable. It might be a memo, or it might be a report. It might just be, a log that shows all the meetings you've had with member agencies or staff. But it's, it's a way to be accountable, that we have goals, that we have tasks. They're tied to, discrete things the public can see how their money's being spent.
Well, I think
So-
this 2-page report that came with the staff report is a good one.
Yeah.
It does have an awful lot of information in it.
It does. But, if there's a way to, break it out so it's,
So you'd like-
communicated more.
You'd like to see it more as bullet points instead of paragraphs.
Well, so, I'm a grants manager, and we have a standard work program template, so it's like, first you do your tasks, and then each task has its own deliverables, and it might be a qualitative one or a quantitative one. But you start with the task, then you have deliverables. It might be task and subtasks and deliverables, and then, so when you're billing, you're billing to task or billing to deliverable, and your invoice shows that thread of connection between all those things. That's the way to be, I think, really, accountable to taxpayers, is having that.
Could you
Clear.
send that in so that I think it would be useful for all of us to be
Yeah,
able
it's
to
just,
see
it's
that.
very simple and very, straightforward. And I love the, the narrative that you supplied in your memo. That's good stuff too. I'd like having that as well, but if
That's
we can
fine.
have something that's broken out so that when somebody's looking at an invoice that says X number of hours for task 1 or subtask 2.1 or whatever it is, but at least we can, connect the dots,
Okay.
better. So that works for me, and so I'm glad you broke that out in your presentation.
If I may interject, it's coming to be time for a motion to extend. I think the last 3 closed sessions might take 10 minutes at the most. I
Okay.
can't speak for the first 2. I don't think the first one's going to be short. Second one may take a little longer. I'll let Chris speak up to that. So we may need 15, 20 minutes.
Should I have a motion?
May take a little longer. We should.
Second,
What was the motion?
move that we extend the meeting 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Or whatever
See how far
Carl
we got.
recommended.
Because we still have to make a motion on this business before us.
Right.
Yeah, sorry, that's what I was.
No, thank
I
you.
did want you to
That's not
continue this. So you moved to second it?
Yeah.
Slater got it, yeah. We have a vote, and we're all good?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Then I move that we
Thank you.
authorize the acting general manager to issue a purchase order in an amount not to exceed $39,000 to wastewater management specialist LLC for ongoing organizational and management consultant services as part of phase 1 work effort.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Okay. No more PowerPoints.
Attorney's report on the topics.
Due to the time, I will dispense with my attorney's report and conduct it entirely in closed session.
Thank you.
I don't see the agenda items on the electronic version. The closed
I do.
The end, number 10.
They're in the, well, I.
Oh, mine just says blank page,
Yeah,
blank
blank
page.
page.
So you going into
There's,
closed
you
session?
can't get in them that way. This is what goes on the web. So we're not giving out those.
Okay, and there's no director's reports
Any
and
director's
future agenda.
reports, topics for future agenda board consideration? No, then we will end open session and open in closed